Let me tell you why you cannot stay consistent. And the reason is not what you think, and it has nothing to do with willpower, nothing to do with discipline, nothing to do with how badly you want it. You think you are weak. You think you lack commitment. But the truth is much simpler and much more dangerous. Your brain is wired wrong, and every time you chase a big win, you are rewiring it to fail. This is not about motivation. This is about biology. And until you understand what is happening inside your skull, you will keep repeating the same destructive patterns. Let me show you exactly what is going on. Meet Sarah, 27 years old. She had been trading for 3 years. She knew her strategy. She had good setups, but she could not stay consistent. One week she would follow her rules perfectly. Small, controlled trades, disciplined execution. And then one big win would happen. A trade that made her 5% in a day. And everything would change. The next day, she would take bigger risks, chase setups that were not quite ready, force trades because she wanted that feeling again, that rush, that high. And within 2 weeks, she would give back everything she made, and more. She thought she had a discipline problem, but she did not. She had a dopamine problem. She was unknowingly wiring herself wrong. Now meet David, same age, same strategy, same market. But David never chased big wins. He aimed for 0.5% per trade, boring, predictable, small. And after 6 months, his account had grown steadily while Sarah was still breaking even. What separated them was not skill, it was brain chemistry. Sarah was a dopamine addict. David had learned to keep his prefrontal cortex in control. He had developed a system to ensure this and remained loyal to it, because he knew he was human and was aware of his weaknesses. Let me explain how this works. The dopamine trap versus prefrontal dominance. Your brain releases dopamine when you experience pleasure. A big win in trading triggers a massive dopamine spike. It feels incredible. It feels like success. It feels like you finally figured it out. But actually, something much more dangerous happens. That dopamine surge shuts down your prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is the part of your brain responsible for logic, planning, and rational decision-making. The part that follows rules. The part that stays disciplined. The part that thinks long-term. And dopamine overrides it. When Sarah hit that big win, her brain flooded with dopamine. And in that moment, her prefrontal cortex went offline. She stopped thinking rationally. She started chasing the feeling. She became an addict, chasing the next hit. And addicts do not make good decisions. They make desperate ones. Big dopamine spikes are why we become prone to making mistakes. And if our system is one that releases large amounts of dopamine when we win, we may be unknowingly sabotaging ourselves constantly. This is not a character flaw. This is brain chemistry. When you chase big wins, you are training your brain to operate in dopamine-seeking mode. Small wins do not interest you. You always want to trade like the last one you took that gave you 1 to 5, but the market may not always offer those kinds of trades. But your brain is still looking for it. And dopamine-seeking mode is incompatible with consistency. Because consistency is boring. Consistency does not give you that rush. Consistency does not flood your brain with chemicals. Consistency requires your prefrontal cortex to stay online, and it cannot do that when you keep spiking your dopamine with big wins. Here is the brutal truth. As long as your brain is running after big wins like an addict chasing a high, the market will continue to be your executioner. You cannot outwit biology. You have to work with it. And working with it means giving up the dopamine and training your prefrontal cortex to find satisfaction in small, boring wins. Small and boring profits create healthier wiring, and instead of increasing your potential to make mistakes, it increases your likelihood of being sustainably profitable. David understood this. He never aimed for 5% days. He aimed for 0.5%. And every time he hit that small target, his brain registered it as a win. Not a dopamine explosion. Just a quiet, controlled success. And over time, his prefrontal cortex learned that this was the pattern. Small, steady, safe. And it stopped craving the chaos. It stopped needing the spike. It learned to operate in calm, rational mode. And that is where consistency lives. He had succeeded in programming his brain correctly with calm and consistent profits. Myelination, the biological construction of consistency. Here is something most traders do not know. Consistency is not just a habit, it is a physical structure in your brain. Let me explain. Every time you perform an action, your brain sends an electrical signal through a neural pathway. The more you repeat that action, the more your brain reinforces that pathway. And it does this through a process called myelination. Myelin is a fatty substance that wraps around your neural pathways like insulation around a wire. The thicker the myelin, the faster and more automatic the signal. This is how skills become effortless. This is how habits become unconscious. And this is how consistency becomes your default state. So whatever you consistently practice, you grow. If you have a system where you risk 1 to target 5, your brain becomes programmed to this and low gains stop releasing dopamine for you. Getting a small profit almost stops being a win. So you constantly chase the same type of trades, and even if the market is not suitable for those kinds of trades, your brain will look for them. So it will convince you there is an opportunity and manipulate you to try to reach that same dopamine spike. When Sarah chased big wins, she was building myelin around the wrong pathways. Every time she broke her rules to chase a setup, she reinforced the neural pathway for impulsive behavior. She was unknowingly wiring herself incorrectly. Every time she increased her risk after a big win, she thickened the myelin around reckless decision-making. And over time, those behaviors became automatic, almost inevitable. She did not even realize she was doing them. They felt natural, because her brain had built the infrastructure to support them. But when David took his small, disciplined trades, he was building myelin around a different pathway. The pathway for patience, for rule following, for calm execution. And every single day that myelin got a little thicker. Until one day, discipline was not something he had to force. It was just how his brain operated. It was his new default. David could apply it easily while Sarah struggled. Because even when at some point she understood she should not keep chasing big targets, every time she tried to be consistent, her brain found a way to derail her. Because she had unknowingly wired her brain incorrectly. This is the power of small wins. They do not just add up financially. They build the biological structure for consistency. Every small win thickens the myelin around the right behaviors. Every small win makes discipline a little easier, a little more automatic, a little less effort. And after 100 small wins, you do not need willpower anymore, because your brain has physically rebuilt itself to operate in consistency mode. Discipline is not a requirement. It is the art of insulating your neurons correctly, and small wins are how you do that. Big wins, on the other hand, are wiring your brain for dopamine spikes. And whether you like it or not, your brain will seek that dopamine. Even if there is no opportunity, it will convince you there is and manipulate you to try its luck at reaching that big dopamine. While all this is happening, you may be getting angry at yourself for breaking discipline again. Being disciplined is so hard because you wired yourself incorrectly, and your default settings keep derailing you. But whatever you stop feeding slowly stops being your default. And whatever you start feeding will become your new default mode. So instead of being upset, feed the right things. This is how you will gradually achieve change. And whatever you do not feed the wrong things. If necessary, do not take that trade and do not make that money. Because even if you make that money, your incorrect brain wiring may cause you to lose much more in the future. So we are feeding the right behaviors. That is all. The small wins paradox. Why tiny victories create massive results. Here is something that will blow your mind. Big goals crush your brain. When you tell yourself today, I am going to double my account, your brain does not get motivated. It gets paralyzed. Because doubling your account is not a task. It is a fantasy. And your brain knows it. So it floods your system with cortisol, stress hormone, the hormone that makes you freeze, that makes you second guess, that makes you fail. But when you tell yourself today, I am just going to follow my rules and make 0.5%, your brain codes that as achievable. It does not stress, it does not panic, it just executes. And every time you hit that small target, something incredible happens. Your brain releases a small amount of dopamine. Not the explosion that comes from a big win, just a quiet signal that says, good job. And that signal does two things. First, it reinforces the behavior. Your brain learns that following rules leads to success. And it wants to repeat that. Because it is an easily attainable goal, it is easier for you to reinforce it. And quickly, discipline becomes inevitable. Second, it builds your self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is your belief in your ability to succeed. And it is not built by dreaming big, it is built by winning small. Every time you hit a small target, your brain updates its model of who you are. And it becomes convinced every day, again and again, that this is true. Because making 0.5% is not difficult. You are someone who wins. You are someone who follows through. You are someone who executes. And after 100 small wins, that model becomes your identity. You are no longer someone trying to be consistent. You are someone who is consistent, and identity precedes behavior. Who you believe you are determines what you do. Sarah believed she was someone chasing big wins, so she kept chasing. David believed he was someone who executed small, disciplined trades, so he kept executing, and their results reflected their identities. That is what happened. David built confidence and discipline while Sarah destroyed herself and her psychology by chasing the impossible. David could gradually increase his risk over time and maintain the same discipline. On the other hand, Sarah had to struggle to fix her incorrect brain wiring. Realizing it was wrong was not enough. She had to stop feeding the wrong behaviors and practice the right ones, even if it did not appeal to her, because she had become accustomed to big wins. Daily 1% growth meant nothing to her. Moreover, even though it was not a profitable trade, she found 1% insufficient. Yet if you actually looked, she had not even achieved that. She was at a loss. But because she had wired herself incorrectly, her entire perspective was ruined too. Her brain was presenting things it found insufficient in terms of dopamine as wrong to her. She interpreted them as illogical because she found them boring. Yet the reality was very different. Here is the paradox. Massive results are not created by massive actions. They are created by tiny actions repeated so many times they become inevitable. Boring and small actions. Massive results are the sum of boring victories stacked on top of each other. You do not build an empire by laying one giant brick. You build it by laying 10,000 small ones. And every small win is another brick, another layer of myelin, another update to your identity. Until the empire is so solid, nothing can shake it. Real traders are built this way, not by chasing glory, by stacking boring victories until boring becomes unstoppable. Trading correctly every day results in making the money you once dreamed of become ordinary. There is no other option anymore. The normal state of your life has become being profitable and maintaining it. This is all you know. Degenerate setups targeting extraordinary profits do not interest you. Other strategies do not interest you. You do not care who says what or how much they make. You see your setup and you take it. You wait for it to conclude. The results do what is necessary for you. Now, repeating this every day and moving forward becomes inevitable. You have wired yourself so correctly that success has become automatic. You easily do the right thing and make money. Questions like, will I break my discipline? Will I become like I used to be? Do not even cross your mind anymore. Because you have changed, degenerate things do not appeal to you. They do not excite you either. That side of you has long since died, and it has been replaced by the correct version you strengthened step by step. Neural pruning, killing the old habits. Now let me tell you how to destroy the old version of yourself, the version that breaks rules, that chases big wins, that sabotages progress. Your brain has a feature called synaptic pruning. It is a cleanup process. Your brain constantly monitors which neural pathways you use and which ones you do not. And the ones you do not use? It prunes them. It weakens them. And eventually gets rid of them. This is how you unlearn bad habits. Not by fighting them, by starving them. If the brain does not use something for a certain period, it gets rid of it. The brain works this way to operate itself more efficiently. It does not want to store and remember everything, so starve your wrong behaviors. You will experience withdrawal, you will get bored, you will want excitement. Your brain will scream at you to press the button. But do not. Starve yourself enough and eventually these desires and your withdrawal will end, because your brain will prune the networks that command you to perform those behaviors. When Sarah stopped chasing big wins and started focusing on small, disciplined trades, something happened in her brain. The neural pathway for impulsive behavior stopped getting reinforced. Every day she did not check the 5-minute chart. That pathway got a little weaker. Every day she did not take a revenge trade. The myelin around that behavior started to thin. And after weeks of not feeding that pathway, her brain began to prune it. The urge to chase setups started to fade, not because she was fighting it, but because her brain was physically dismantling the structure that supported it. This is how she managed to get rid of the habits she did not want. David experienced the same thing in reverse. The more he focused on the 4-hour chart and small wins, the more his brain pruned the pathways for impatience, for fear of missing out, for reckless risk-taking. Those behaviors did not just become harder, they became foreign. His brain had literally killed the infrastructure that made them possible. And this is the most powerful truth about neural pruning. You do not have to fight your old habits. You just have to stop feeding them, and your brain will kill them for you. When you stop feeding your old habits, your brain will destroy them on your behalf. This is not metaphor. This is biology. The neurons that fired together for bad behavior will stop firing together, and eventually they will disconnect. And the old you will be gone, not suppressed, dead. So you know what you need to do. You know the version of you that distances you from your goals. Starve it. Stop feeding it so it stops distancing you from your goals. Feed the right behaviors. Kill the wrong ones. That is the deal. The choice. Dopamine chaser or consistency builder? So here is where you are, right now. You have a choice. You can keep chasing dopamine. Keep aiming for big wins. Keep spiking your brain with chemical highs and watching your prefrontal cortex shut down. Keep building myelin around impulsive behavior. Keep reinforcing the neural pathways that lead to account blowups. Or you can do something different. You can aim for small wins, boring wins, 0.5% wins, 1% wins. And you can let those small wins build myelin around discipline, around patience, around calm execution. You can let 100 small victories rewire your identity from someone who chases to someone who executes. You can let synaptic pruning kill the old version of you that could not stay consistent. This is not about motivation. This is about brain architecture. And brain architecture is built one repetition at a time. Sarah eventually figured this out. She stopped aiming for 5% days. She started aiming for 0.5%. And in the first month, it felt terrible, boring, unrewarding. Her brain screamed for the dopamine spike. But she did not give in. And after 30 days of small wins, something shifted. Discipline stopped feeling like effort. It started feeling normal. Her brain had built the myelin. It had pruned the old pathways. And she became a different trader. Not because she tried harder, because she rebuilt her neural infrastructure. She did this consciously and got the results she wanted. David never had to go through that struggle, because he started with small wins from day one. He never trained his brain to crave dopamine spikes. He never built the pathways for impulsive behavior. He chose to act more consciously. He just quietly stacked small victories until his brain had no choice but to operate in consistency mode. And 6 months later, he was profitable. Not because he was smarter, because his brain was wired correctly. That was the whole point. Here is what I want you to understand. You are not broken. You are not weak. You are not undisciplined. You are just wired wrong. Because when you started this, you did not really know what you were up against, and you went through a lot of processes. While going through these processes, you did a lot of wrong wiring. But do not worry. Wiring can be changed. But it will not change by chasing the same dopamine hits. It will only change by choosing small wins, by building myelin around the right behaviors, by letting your brain prune the old pathways and construct new ones. Identity precedes behavior, and identity is built in your neurons. So stop trying to be consistent. Start building the brain of someone who is consistent, and let biology do the rest.